Quid pro quo, no mo. The Gospel sync in number 54, Matthew 5 verses 38 to 48, Luke 6 verses 27 to 36. Welcome back. Today, we'll be combining the Gospels of Matthew and Luke to investigate how Jesus expects us to relate to others in light of the way God relates to us. So let's dive in. The Gospel, Matthew 5 verses 38 to 48, Luke 6 verses 27 to 36. But to those of you who will listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And if anyone takes what is yours, do not demand it back. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit or reward will you get? Do not even tax collectors do the same? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Do not even Gentiles do the same? Even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them, expecting nothing in return. Then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. My thoughts. My friend Burke recently coined the phrase quid pro quo, no mo. In other words, he was no longer going to play the tit-for-tat game. As he was reading the scriptures, he became convinced that we should not be living on the standard of equal treatment. He would stop living the loan for loan, favor for favor, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, I treat you the way you treat me kind of life. But wait, that seems unfair. Does God really expect us to initiate kindness and grace when none has been extended to us? Or even go beyond by repaying kindness to those who do us dirty? Why, yes, he does. Jesus makes it very clear that his disciples are to live above the fray of getting our due. We are to give to those who ask, lend without expecting repayment, extend kindness to others that don't deserve it, and even love our enemies. Now that's different. A couple of why questions. First, why is this so hard for us to do? I think one reason is that we are made in the image of God, and justice is part of the total package. We are like God in that there is a sense of fairness about us. We want to see people get what they deserve, good and bad. On the other hand, we want justice for ourselves. But just a little bit of justice. I mean, when we are wronged, we want it made right. But when it comes to making our wrongs toward others right, that's a different story. We don't want to go too far with the justice thing. That would be overdoing it a little, don't you think? Tongue in cheek. We want grace and mercy, and to be understood as the imperfect beings that we are. When it comes to God giving us what we really deserve, well, we'd prefer a little mercy. Maybe a whole lot of mercy. And the second question, why does Jesus want us to act this way? The short answer, because that's the way God acts toward us. When we boil it down to base, we don't want a quid pro quo relationship with God. That would be a disaster. How could we ever pay back God for what he has given us? And here's a news flash. God doesn't need anything from us. And do we really want God to give us what we deserve? God acts toward us in the exact same manner as Jesus, God himself, commands us to relate toward others. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more then, having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. For if while we were enemies we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. Romans 5 verses 8 to 10. So Jesus is merely commanding us to be all we were meant to be, having been made in the image of God. And when we think about it, we wouldn't have it any other way. Treating others the way God treats us is immensely better than a quid pro quo relationship, especially in light of the reward we will receive from him in the end. My story. I have no better example on earth than my wife Deb. She has patiently loved and served me for 40 years. Growing up, I really didn't have a very good model of God's love or even simple love itself. I began to learn this God love from Cecil and Jeannie Bean when they moved me into their home as a brand new believer in Jesus. But when I married Deb, I entered into a whole new world. She put up with my weaknesses and flaws. Deb would say I'm overstating this, but I know I'm a challenge to live with. She always loved and served me as though I were a king. This is the kind of relationship that is hard not to reflect on and try to emulate. Even when she was going through chemotherapy for breast cancer, she went out of her way to love our family. One afternoon, when she had just finished a treatment, the boys wanted to go to a local store to look at some toys. When the boys got home from school, she got up from the couch, severely nauseated, and walked to the store with our sons. More recently, Deb has had to take on what I would call the manly chores around the house. When a jar needs to be opened, Deb does it. When a screwdriver needs to be used, Deb does it. When we need to climb a ladder to change a light bulb, Deb's on it, not me. There are so many things I can't do anymore that Deb simply does without complaining. And this is just a glimpse into the way she has selflessly served our family for years. In a lot of ways, Deb has discipled me in the ways of Jesus. She has been a living picture of the Sermon on the Mount. Deb has done unto me as Jesus did to her. There is no quid pro quo in her. And no doubt people have seen our relationship and been brought closer to Jesus as a result. I certainly married up. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. John 13 verses 34 to 35. Deb has been an excellent disciple maker. Our action plan. Phew, this is a tall order, but how are we going to put this one into action? Here's some ideas. Take inventory of existing conflicts you have with other people. Are we handling it in a quid pro quo fashion or a Jesus fashion? Ask the same question of those you are discipling. Answer these questions honestly. Does Jesus really expect us to live this way? What practical steps can we take to move this direction? I believe Jesus was serious about living the kind of life that would more closely match the way he lived his. Let us strive in our resolve and his strength to be like him. Colossians 1 verse 29.